So when you come back, you bring self. But while you're there, you keep self and keep sanity in the midst of the rat race, in the midst of the New York Minute, where we're used to the laid back, you know, flow. All right, you keep it because you connect with other people from home. So where your name, as we say, your name on the paper might be Suzanne Jones. We didn't know that name. Your name, a new gal. Okay, so you have to reconnect to those who can call you legal. Yeah. You reconnect to those who the crack your teeth, like this show on Friday night. You go to the fish fry, you go to the house party, you go to the rec party that's at so-and-so's place, and you talk, and you share, and you dance, and you shout, and you do all of that because it allows you release. Yeah. So you get to stand up and do it instead of laying down on the couch and then getting a bill afterwards. But that's been, I think, a great dynamic that's played out. You know. Yes, Bob?
My comment is in relation to your question number 4 about how do displaced people manage not to displace themselves, or how do they resist displacement. And I want to relate it to what Dr. Baker was talking the other day about the Middle Passage and the horrors of the Middle Passage. But I was also thinking about one of the things that came to mind when he was talking about that is a sort of, which is something that we don't talk a lot about because it doesn't really get exposed much in the media, which is the bodies of Africans that end in the northern shores, in the Mediterranean, of people who are trying to cross to Europe. And that nobody talks about because governments don't want to take responsibility for that. So you have hundreds of bodies in the shore every day of people from North Africa, from East Africa, from West Africa, people who have been basically taking those journeys for months and months. And sort of they end up dead because they go in these small boats. And
like a Haitian.
Right. So to cross to Spain, and so they go in these really small boats, and most of them, about 80% of them, end up dead. And then you have the lucky 10% who make it to Spain and get caught by the guards, by the, and return back. And then you have those lucky ones, another 10% that makes it. And I always wonder when I go sort of to Europe, to Spain and France and these places about sort of being an illegal immigrant and this kind of politics of invisibility, but also in relation to these lost bodies, the bodies that come back that have no identities, that we don't sort of talk about. So I was just sort of, because you were saying, how do we resist, insanity? And I always wonder about that. But my second comment is talking about displacement and how people resist displacement. I was thinking about, there's this Palestinian film called Divine Intervention. And so this Palestinian guy lives in Israel, and there's sort of Israeli occupation. And the only way he can resist is by blasting his Palestinian music in his car and forcing everybody to listen to him while he's driving. And sort of being in Tuscaloosa, I had a similar moment. Not in the sort of in the same context, of course, but just driving my car in the street and having my Moroccan music on. And and then I realized that everybody from their cars were looking at me. And so I put my windows up very quickly, because so sort of what does it mean to be displaced? How do you resist displacement? Should I leave my windows down and blast my music to claim my space in Tuscaloosa, or do I put my windows up and stay in my space? So,
and that's the difference between voluntary and forced again, going back to Abby's comment about the Japanese being driven to the internment camps and whether the windows are up or driving the train and whether the windows are up or down.
Right.
Yes.
It reminds me of two sort of more local examples. One, thinking about, I also like to ride around with my music blasting, which is not necessarily about resisting displacement, but it is about sort of, claiming space. I think that's a particular marker of hip-hop generation era folk as well. And it's sort of this question we have about them representing place in a really hyper visible kind of way in their music. And I wonder if it is not about a history of displacement within urban areas as well, and a history of trying to resist insanity by, you know, it's the Melly Mel and the message, 1982. It's like a jungle. Sometimes it makes me wonder how I keep from going under, right? So you're looking at conditions that are designed to drive you into madness. And so you begin to speak out of that madness, and also to then rep those places that are not necessarily safe for you, but to say there are beautiful people here with power. That might be something that's going on in hip hop. And one of the ways you know it is the reactions you get, because these folks are always seen as intruders when they roll through your hood, go up in the music. You know, it's like you're out of place. You're not right. Contain, which is one reason why, as a hip hop generationer, I refuse to contain sometimes, just in homage to that. And it reminds me too of another forced migration that's going on. I just moved from Atlanta, and they've abolished all the housing projects in the city, and given all the, like, they're gone. You know, all the folks, all the housing projects on like Bankhead Highway and those places, and they've given them vouchers and said you can move to the outskirts of the city, but they've decided that concentrated poverty doesn't have any benefits. And so when you think about people who lived in those projects, like, it's two kinds of narratives: generational poverty, so folks who live, older people, right, who live there, low income older folk, that's the only home they've known, and they said, here's a voucher, go ahead somewhere, you know. And so we've got these other kinds of forced migrations, and Atlanta's not the only urban area that's doing that. And so I wonder then what we think about those folks who are now having to replace themselves in relationship to resources, jobs, etc.
And the homeless populations. In 1996, when Atlanta had the Olympics, remember they blocked the tickets, got all the homeless people off the street, and sent them to places like Chapel Hill, North Carolina, because we were perceived to be, dare I say, affluent enough to afford homeless people. Queen Quet, and then you, Phil?
I just wanted to add to what you were just stating. I also travel with my music bumping. But anyway, also adding to the oral in terms of the musical aspect, again, the body movement, rise and crumpet also is an examination of expression out of my space, and to also make it known to others that I have something creative to contribute to the world, in spite of the hardships you may think I live in.
So there's a kind of intrusiveness, though, about that, for what you're saying, and the assertion of self that I don't care what you say. And going back to Catherine's point about, you know, inward and individuality, which is implicit individuality, I will be who I am, y'all be damned.
Right.